Hello, friends. I wanted to hop on here really quick and give you an update on the Radonda Vaught sentencing. So, if you watched it, it came out today, and the Radonda Vaught case, we'll go over the details, just like a quick recap in a few minutes. But she was found today. She's not going to have jail time. She's going to have probation for 3 years, and it is a diverted sentencing, which means that she can get out of that even sooner, and it has the possibility of getting taken off of her record. I was streaming the actual verdict with Potentially Criminal. I will leave his channel link down below so you can kind of see like how it evolved in real time. But this is, in my opinion, like the best case scenario for what's going on. So let's take a few steps back. Hi, Nurse Scott, and talk about really quick what kind of went on with this case, why it's important, and why this has caused such a revolution within the nursing and healthcare community. So, if you're super new, I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I covered this case. I have a few videos back on the Radonda case when it first came out. And what this case was this is a nurse who worked at Vanderbilt Medical Center. She made medication errors. We're not going to get terribly in the weeds here of what they were. She gave the wrong medication to a patient who passed away, and it was horrible. This case was then covered up by the hospital. They settled with the family. They paid them a lot of money and said, "Hey, you can't talk about this." And then this case, all of a sudden, the Department of Health had kind of said, "Radonda, you're fine." She got fired from her job, but they didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden, the state decided to prosecute her criminally, which is abnormal. They usually, with a case when you have a medication error that ends up causing harm, it's tried criminally or civilly, sorry. And that goes, and like maybe your nursing license will be revoked. But the primary way to avoid outcomes like this is to identify within the system how the error was even allowed to happen and then fix it by allow and then so it never happens again. Everyone here wants the patients to be the safest. No one wants to see any other family ever, ever go through anything like this again. And so that is why nurses were so for having her sentence be as light as possible, which is what happened today. I'm incredibly grateful that that judge, one, she laid it out really well. If you go back and watch her, I'll leave a link to when it was the live stream, like I said below. She really laid out like why this is not even appropriate really for a criminal setting because she didn't have intent. Putting her in jail will not fix this. This is just going to send the wrong message of what to go out and criminally charge more healthcare people, which is going to lead people to not come forth and report mistakes, which is going to make patient safety worse. So, in my opinion, this is like the best case outcome that we could have seen. I think hopefully they will use kind of what the judge had said as a good way to like bounce off and maybe not do further so other people aren't like, hey, I'm going to get my moment and I'm also going to start trying healthcare cases criminally. That's not what we want to see. And I think this is important to highlight because like we saw with the Christiane Ganey case, right? I have a video on her too. I will leave it down below. The This was a nurse in Pennsylvania who made a horrible error, also leading to a horrible thing. They tried her criminally, and ended up taking a plea deal, and that DA literally said he's going to come after everyone in like he's going to target people who work in long-term care who make these mistakes. And when you have 39 patients, you're going to make mistakes, right? So and it's not to ever excuse the behavior. It's not to say, "Oh, like it's totally fine that she made this mistake and this happened." She owned up to it. She immediately said, "I made this horrible error." And that's not the point of all of this, is not to come out and say like medical errors should have no consequences. The point is to say, I don't like criminally consequent, making them a criminal consequence is going to lead to so much harm and danger down the line versus a civil consequence of having your license revoked, paying a fine, things like that. So I never want it to come across as, oh, we're just saying, hey, I did it at work. So it's totally fine. Like this is not taken flippantly. This is something that is going to live with her the rest of her life, Radonda the rest of her life, Christiane Ganey the rest of her life. But bringing these cases to the forefront like this really can set a precedent of, hey, if you want your moment in the like spotlight, all you DAs out there, this is how you do it. You prosecute, nurses, and then you get your name in the news, which some of the lawyers that I was in the chat over there on, they were saying that like DAs will do that a lot and prosecute cases because they know it'll get their name in the news. And that's definitely kind of what we saw here. That's what we really saw with the Christine Gainey case. We do not want this to become normal. And yeah, so that's kind of my quick take on that. I can't be here overly long today because my I have to go hop on and do something, but I did want to come on here and wrap this case up, kind of get a few of your thoughts. And oh, I'm just really relieved right now. I'm not a legal person at all. So when they were talking, I was like, I don't know what any of these words mean. And I don't know if this is like going well or if this is going poorly, but it ended up being in my mind, the best possible thing that could have happened. So she won't go to jail. The state was trying to give her 3 to 6 years. And so she won't go to jail. She will have supervised probation so she can go home. I don't know with probation, what, like you can't leave the state or something. And then they also put diversion on it, which I didn't know what that was, but I am told that is that she could maybe get it off of her record. I mean, it will always be that she was charged. She was charged with reckless, whatever. I don't even remember what it was at this point. Let's see if I can find it. Homicide or something like that, but she doesn't have to go to jail, which I feel like, I mean, if you just saw her face afterwards, that was like, she was just so relieved. She had been charged with criminally negligent homicide and gross neglect of an impaired adult. So she was charged with that. However, like I said, she will not be going to jail for it, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Hello, everyone who is here in the chat. Thanks everybody for being here for our spontaneous live. Nurse Scott was over on that chat too. Courts are interesting. It made me remember my first time on a jury a few years ago. Ooh. I've only been on a jury once, and I don't like it. It was not good. Susan Bailey, I agree. The judge did a really good job. She was really fair. I was very, very happy with, I think she understood, and she brought up in her argument, she was like, putting Radonda in jail would not gain anything. She's lost her nursing license. I saw some people in the other chat, they were saying, like, oh, well, could she get a license in a different state? Friends, Radonda never wants to be a nurse again. Like, a lot of us don't even want to be nurses, and we haven't gone through anything. If you've gone through something like that where something horrible has happened and someone has died, you really don't want to seek your nursing license anyway. At least I would assume she probably doesn't. I think she probably just wants to like leave this behind her. She has a cute little farm. She wants to go on her way. But the judge had said, like, she's not a risk to anyone. She is not, she doesn't have a nursing license. She will never be in this situation again. So really, what does putting her in jail do? It doesn't get the patient back. It was like the thing that's going to be the safest is to not put her in jail and really make a statement that this is not the way to handle this, which is what she did, so that nurses continue to report their mistakes and we can learn from them and make everything safer. And that's what happened. So all good things there. The family was there. The patient's son did testify, and he said that so when you are at a sentencing hearing, which is what it was today, so she was charged months ago. A month ago, maybe a month and a half. And when you come to a sentencing hearing, which today is kind of when they decide the punishment that they're going to go with, and you can have what's called like impact statements. And that's when family and people affected can come and give a character witness for both Radonda, but also the family of the patient can come forward and say, this is how this has affected us, and to kind of weigh in on, just before the judge gives the sentence, it kind of lets the family say, this is kind of what we're thinking. This is how this has affected in real life, not from like just a much more humane, I think, kind of discussion versus in the trial. It's very litigatory-ish. But so they did that, and the son actually came forward and said, again, like he had in the article a while ago, and I think the Tennessean, saying that his mom would not have wanted her to go to jail. And like that she was a forgiving person. And obviously it's incredibly devastating to their family. And I just want to highlight that I don't think no one is trying to take away from that. We just don't want to see it happen again. And I think this, going through it the way that it has been with not sending her to jail, will encourage people to not run away from reporting when they make an error. Um, so he had come out and said that, which I thought was nice and maybe swayed the judge a little bit. He said my mom would never want her to go to jail. The daughter-in-law of the patient said that I think she was saying she didn't want to she made like a contradict I forget what she said. She said something about like I think she did want her to go to jail. She knew her mother-in-law wouldn't want her to, but like she something needed to happen. I forget exactly what she had said. Um she had spoken and then another daughter-in-law had spoken and then Radonda had several people who came and spoke on her behalf about like the type of nurse she was. There was a nurse practitioner that came and gave her sentence her opinion during it in support of Redonda, and she was saying all sorts of stuff about like a med error that she's made, and that almost made me nervous because I was like, oh, don't keep talking, please be quiet, like you don't want to I don't want you to say anything that then could come back on you. But yeah, that was kind of the brief rundown of everything that's going on. Thanks everyone who's saying give the stream a like. I appreciate you. But yeah, give the stream a like. It tells the YouTube gods that you like watching this type of stuff and it'll spread the word about the stream and share it to other people. Um Comment all those things. The YouTube gods really appreciate that and I appreciate it. And then I saw Sophia. Hi Sophia. Sophia is one of my channel members. I appreciate everyone who comes and joins and watches and shares and likes and all of those good things. Let me see. Okay, let's go back. And Anik said it was a good decision from the judge. I agree. I agree. But can't have the provider nurse tech patient ratios we always have and not have the mistakes. Okay, we can't have the provider nurse patient tech ratios we have and not have the mistakes. Exactly. And people were saying in the other chat that I was in that, oh, will this make more nurses think through their actions more? Will it make them more safe? Will it make them pause and like go slower when they're administering meds? And that's a hard thing because it's like you have no time. Like you do not have a lot of times like yes, I think nurses with more experience and you guys can let me know what you think. I think nurses with more experience would feel comfortable slowing down more and like really double checking things and making it painful for the institution. It's like, well, that didn't get done because I was double checking I was like doing everything to the safest a bit of my ability, but you're going to get a lot of backlash for that. Patients' families are going to yell at you. Providers are going to probably yell at you. Other nurses might yell at you when you're handing them things at shift change. You know what I mean? And they're like, why didn't you do this? And you're like, I didn't have time because I was doing everything I needed to do really safely and slowly. So I think someone who has more experience might feel comfortable doing that. But in the current healthcare situation we don't have time to go as safely as we need to. And that's just the really crappy reality of the situation. And So I don't think that in most cases it will. I think younger nurses who are newer will not necessarily feel like, you have the ability to stand your ground in that way and be like, no, I'm just going to take the time that I need and I'm going to face the consequences. Nurse Lit, Michael R. said it's causing us to second guess so much to include patient assignments. Yeah, I imagine that it would make you really question how safe is this? What do I want to make myself like? Everything would be, I feel like, a liability. And just from a personal perspective, I don't think that I was so stressed as a nurse anyway. Like I was constantly thinking, oh my gosh, what if I screw up? What if I screw up? And I wasn't even honestly thinking of what if I get sued? And now that would be another thing on top of everything would be what if I get sued and I lose my license? And that's just, I can't imagine. So if you're out there and you're doing this, and you're a nurse or really anyone in healthcare, like I give you all the kudos in the world. And you're doing the thing and I can't do the thing right now. I needed to take a step back from practice because I was just like, it's too much. Like it is just too much. I am too worried about making a mistake and going to jail. Like honestly, making a mistake and going to jail. Like it's just my job is never worth my life. You know what I mean? Um, Susan said, agreed. I think they would have played on her attempt to hide her lack of follow up and trying to hide it. So I think she's talking about the fact that Vanderbilt tried to hide it. Radonda went right out and said it. Like as soon as the event happened, she walked into the room where all the people were coding the patient and said, I gave the wrong med. And I cannot fathom how difficult that would have been. I have had to admit to mistakes before, and it is difficult when the stakes are much lower to admit to a mistake like that when the stakes are that high. That took a whole heck of a lot of bravery, and I think we like that needs to be recognized immensely, and the judge did. The judge said, "Hey, she immediately owned up to it," and that's very, very impressive. Um, Joseph said, "Hi, Liz. I work in accounting at HEA Healthcare, and I just found your channel. Welcome." Oh, don't be offended by anything I say about the marketing department. It's not personal. Nurse Scott said, "Malpractice insurance only covers civil suits, not criminal charges." Yes, that is absolutely very true. So I think a lot of people also didn't know that when we were going into this. I didn't know that going into this. I was like, oh, malpractice insurance. And then they were like, oh, not in a criminal case. I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to go to jail. I I really don't want that. Nurse Scott said, this is talking about what the family said. First, he said the widower so the patient's husband wanted to throw the book at Radonda, but that he also didn't want her to go to prison. And I honestly get that. I feel like you would be in such a difficult position as the family member of how do I stand up for myself? And you would just have so much anguish that had nowhere to go, right? Because it's such an unfair situation that you have so much emotional energy, but there's nowhere to direct it to. And so I can it kind of got directed. I can't imagine having to deal with that situation from the family's perspective. It would just be horrifying. You have nothing that you can really do other than, advocating for safer staffing for nurses and policy changes and transparency with mistakes within hospitals. Um, Let me see. Jay Michael said, with Vaught, I feel like you can only override so many things before you cross into criminal behavior. I think I think she never had criminal intent is my opinion on that. Um you never have, I don't think she ever had criminal intent, and where would we draw the line on how many mistakes is too many mistakes before it becomes criminal? You know what I mean? That would be a very, very difficult line. How would you decide that? That just seems, stressful. Um, Nurse or Susan Bailey says nurses can refuse to take any actions they feel are unsafe. However, the impact on your employment may be great. This is one central point of conflict when we have to deal with this stuff. Yeah. And I think the longer you have been a healthcare provider or a nurse, the more comfortable you are pushing back and saying this is not safe. But I can absolutely tell you in the beginning, I would not have felt safe. Um, I would not have felt comfortable pushing back that much if they said, hey, you just still have to do this. Probably would have done it because I wouldn't have had enough experience and enough confidence in myself to be like, no, I'm going to do this slowly. I'm going to do this safely. I'm not going to do this verbal order you gave me. I'm going to wait till you get it in writing because I certainly don't want to be involved in any of these legal shenanigans. That's how I would tow it, but I understand that that would be really difficult as a new grad. Um, and if you guys have any questions about any of this, feel free to leave it in the chat. I'll probably hang out for another 5 minutes. And then I have got to bounce. My uncle is a civil engineer. And if you follow my Instagram at all, we don't have a yard because the builder won't grade it. So he got the plans from the city and he's going to come help us figure out how to approach this. And do we need to take legal action in order to get our yard to not be a swamp? Because right now it is a swamp and I don't want that. So that's very off topic, but they got here early. So I'm going to go hang out with them. But I wanted to hop on here really quick because I felt like, we need to get the word out that things went well as they could, given that she was already convicted. And yeah. Joseph Dion said, Liz, I have so much respect for our nurses provider and our frontline workers. Thank you for everything you do. Oh, well, thank you. That was very kind. Nurse Scott said, our union allows us to refuse an assignment, but then takes it under protest. There's a form to create a paper trail. I wonder how often people do that. I know ours, you could bring up that it was unsafe, but you still usually had to take the assignment. So it's kind of Farm girl, nurse doc, the system is at fault here. Absolutely. Vanderbilt was also the one that covered it up. So the system, like a lot of the problem with the med error was she was told like it was a known issue that you had to override meds. So like a short list of things that kind of were the system's fault was the hospital was so you have the medicine, the machine you get the meds out of, and then the computer that you order the meds in, and they weren't talking to each other very well. And so you had to override everything. So rather than going into the medicine machine, typing the patient's name and having a nice list of all the medicines that are approved for them to come up that are ordered, in this case, you had to go in and override it. So when she went in to pull it up, the computer had not sent the information to the medicine machine. So she had to type in the medication name. Another problem that came up was the order. Like, we use different names in medicine. So they ordered Versed, which the generic name is midazolam. She typed in VE and vecuronium came up because the computer works in generic and it's just a different language that the two were speaking. So she like there was an error there. There was no scanner on the first floor where she was so that she couldn't scan the patient's med, so another warning would have popped up. So it was just a series of she made a lot of errors, and there was no the safety nets there were there to support her, they were not there. So that is a good example of how it was the system's fault. I've also seen some people in the chat saying that, and in the other chat as well, I was talking with some people and they were saying, well, this was like a serious case. And I just want to highlight that this happens tens of thousands of times a year. This was a case that got brought to the media's attention because um, the DA was trying to, he's running for like office or something. So he was trying to get his name out there and this was going to be a high profile thing. So he brought this to the forefront. And this is not, it's like, this happens all the time. And so we need to have more transparency within our healthcare system because usually what happens, this happens tens of thousands of times a year, which is unacceptable, that medication errors lead to death tens of thousands of times a year. And the reason you never hear about it is because the hospitals, the event happens, the hospital realizes it. The hospital goes and meets with the family and they say, if we give you this much money, you can't ever talk about it, but then you can't sue us either. Do you want to just call it a day and we'll pay you the money and we'll settle? And the family almost always says yes, even if they would like to sue, because suing people is so expensive. You're distraught. Your family member just died. There's no guarantee that you're going to win this lawsuit, right? Because you're going up against a huge hospital, a huge health system. They're going to scare the crap out of you and say, like, you're not going to win this case. This is going to be how this is. And then with all of that, like you're grieving. And so if they're going to take the money, someone in the chat was saying, well, it's their choice to take the money. You're going to take the money because most people are sad. They're overwhelmed. They don't know how the legal system even works to even try to do this. You take the money and then everyone gets hushed because if you take the money, you can't talk about it. That's why like people are outraged about this. But another thing I want to get out of this is raising awareness that this happens all the time and hospitals just sweep it under the rug. And we need to start talking about this type of thing so that we can start fixing it, because the way that hospitals deal with this is covering it up, not reporting it to anyone. The only reason this case exploded was because Vanderbilt paid the family off, all was quiet. And then 10 months after, someone reported it to CMS, which is Center for Medicaid Services. And they looked into it and they said, WTF, mate, why did you never report this to the state? This was a fatal error. And if you don't come up with like a policy of how you're going to fix this and make sure it never happens again, because they asked them, they said, did you implement changes? And they said, no, not good. And then they said, if you don't fix this, we're not paying you. And that's all of Medicare and Medicaid. That's a lot of money. And that is when Vanderbilt decided to make changes. So we need to keep hospital systems held accountable. I don't know how we do that. I mean, my version of keep doing it is to just come on the internet and rant about it. I don't know how we actually get people to do that. I don't know. I see some people saying, like Alice said, never settle. I don't know how feasible that is for families, right? Like in my mind, yeah, that's a great easy solution, is just never settle. But like for a lot of families, that's not reasonable. They can't afford to take people to court. what do we do there? Like for some families too, and then this plays into how different people who are entering the healthcare system in different socioeconomic classes are going to be differently affected. If someone who has a butt ton of money comes in and something happens to their family member, they're going to sue because they can afford the legal team. If someone who is barely making ends meet comes into the legal system, something horrible happens to their family member, and then the hospital offers them more money than they've ever seen in their life, right? They're going to take the money probably because they don't even maybe know what the other options are because that is not something that is part of their normal realm. And the hospital will prey on people like that, and then everything gets hushed up. So again, um I have no idea how to fix that. I find the problems and then I expect all of you to go fix them. Okay. Everyone go out there, become lawyer and changers of the world, and we'll get this going. Farm Girl Nurse says the way to change it is to educate our profession of nurses so that they can drive system changes. Absolutely. And I do see a lot of that happening with this new generation of nurses of they're not taking crap. Like I took a lot of crap when I was a new grad, and I see a lot of people that are not, they're like, oh no, we will not be tolerating that BS. And I appreciate it. I think that's the way that we're going to change things. Alice said, okay, raise awareness, standards are demanded in aviation. Everything is checked and rechecked. Probably should be. We're dealing with people here. We should probably do that. Um, oh, good. A farmhouse nurse, Susan Bailey says she's working on a project to do that. Um, Nurse Liz, what's your take on integrating ratios into accreditation? I don't think it'll ever happen. Accreditation is based on like into hospitals accreditations of what. I think the way to do it a lot like is like Nurse Scott said, unionize. You need to unionize because this needs to be a nurse driven thing where we say, I will not work in unsafe conditions. Employers, hospitals are never, ever going to advocate for safe patient ratios because it costs them a lot of money and they like making a lot of money, not like spending it on patient safety, no matter what they say. This is going to come from government mandated ratios. So voting on things in your area where you're voting on nursing laws, and then nursing unions who are going to stand up. So if the nurses are standing up and the government is standing up, there's a leg to stand on. But right now, the hospitals are running everything, and the lobbying people and the insurance people, and hot mess. Anything that ever comes from, and then like accreditation and, accreditation and like magnet, all of those are just money pits. They don't give a crap about like anything patient safety wise. They are literally just money grabs. So I don't know if going after them would actually do anything. Going after laws that are going to change it, and then forming unions, and really going almost to like CMS, like Center for Medicaid Services, and demanding change it. When CMS starts demanding things, that's when things will actually change. But I don't know how to get them to actually change things, so it almost takes CMS having to fine the hospitals so much and withhold payments that we would actually see change. So I guess that would be another way, is to have CMS develop new things to be like, hey, if you don't meet these measures, what happens now is CMS makes these new measures and they say, hey, we're going to crack down on falls. And then the hospital tacks on one more thing onto nurses' plates that you have to do. And now we're kind of at the breaking point, right? So CMS has said, you have to do these things or we won't pay you. You have to do these things or we won't pay you. And all of that has fallen on nurses' shoulders. And now we're at the point where it's falling apart. For a long time, it was just like, oh my gosh, this job is getting harder, 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 harder. And now we're at the peak and it's crumbling. So that's my take on that. Thank you, everyone who showed up for this quick little live chat. I don't know anything else about how he, Jay Michael said Nurse Blake is working on getting the Joint Commission to incorporate into standard accreditation. But the Joint Commission goes based on CMS. So like, and see if CMS doesn't back it. So it needs to go back one step. You know what I mean? The Joint Commission, they do everything based on CMS requirements, right? They want everything to be up to snuff with CMS. So going after the Joint Commission doesn't really do anything, right? Because the Joint Commission's just following orders of someone else. You need to go to the top or the root. Which one? I don't know. In this analogy, I guess you need to go to the root, right? So that all of it, who that grows from it, would be fixed. I really don't think going after the Joint Commission will do a single thing. But not, I mean, I don't know a lot about it though. So I could be totally wrong, but I would imagine you need to go for the government thing that like CMS, which actually controls things, go for the neck. Okay. Thank you for coming and going to my chat. Maybe we'll have another one about this, or if there's anything else going on in the world of healthcare that you would like me to cover or talk on so that we can have a conversation about it, do let me know. Sorry I have to bounce, but thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Um, yeah, it looks like it's about to thunderstorm here, so that's a bummer. But always remember that you are beautiful humans. You are not alone. You are very, very capable, and you can do hard things. Bye, friends.